we're going to discuss the Great Inversion. As I mentioned earlier, this is a phrase that I've been kind of bringing into my work here and there for the last year or two. But I haven't done a video, haven't discussed what exactly the heck that phrase means. And I figured, you know what, it's about time. So that is what we're going to do now. I sort of alluded to it and before we hit this break, talking about the fact that people like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, I would say Tucker Carlson, I don't know who else to include in there where I feel confidently about. I would say these three gentlemen, I feel confidently about that they are not on our side. You know, you could maybe add Joe Rogan to be skeptical about, Russell Brand, some other people. I'm on the fence. I know everybody's got their opinions on this, but I do know for a fact that there are people who are not what they represent. Do I have their CIA agent badge? No, of course not. But hey, Tucker Carlson did intern at the CIA years ago, and his dad has been connected to all kinds of crazy stuff for those of you who fall for the Tucker Carlson train. So there are some real things to ask about these people. And when I say Great Inversion, I usually also say false awakening, because I think that gets the point to people, you know. But right now I'm going to break down what I mean by Great Inversion, where I heard it from, which is from a girl named Alexandra, a channel. She goes by Probably Alexandra. And then also talking about Rudolf Steiner and his views on Lucifer and Ahriman and these two different entities or energies and how they represent, they're on the same plane, they're just different poles of that. But the real truth, the real solution, what he refers to as like the Christ consciousness energy, is completely separate and above from that. And I essentially believe that that's what we're witnessing. We've got the clear enemy, let's say it's the leftists for right now, and the people representing the Great Reset and all these horrible things that we're seeing. And then the opposite polarity of that is this apparent awakening, like, oh my God, Elon Musk saved Twitter and the Twitter files. Pay no attention to the fact that he's using an Israeli firm with connections to Israeli intelligence to process ID verification for people. But, you know, we've got him, and then Tucker Carlson broke free from Fox News, and now he's just spitting truth all day and waking people up. And Russell Brand, he's no longer, you know, in Hollywood. He's just had this awakening. Oh, wouldn't you guess? Now he's Christian. And Jordan Peterson, apparently he's going down that road as well. And then, of course, we got Donald Trump, obviously. And there's other figures. Again, I'm sure you guys can think of others that you might fit in this category. But that is what I see this Great Inversion as. It's this false light that is being presented. Yes, you can clearly see the darkness, and you understand, like, these people over here and their sick ideologies do not represent what I believe in. But then at the same time, for some people, it's a lot harder to look at the apparent heroes that are being put in front of us and realize that they are part of the same equation. They are just this false light, that they're the false light in this Great Inversion. And for me also, you know, inversion means to invert something, right? So you flip it, you make it up backwards or upside down, inside out. I also think that the Great Inversion represents this periodic, like in terms of humanity, like Steiner says, this is something we've been dealing with for generations, for thousands of years. But also I think just maybe every few decades or something, like particularly to the United States. It's been for a while now that people have realized that the left is getting crazier and crazier the last 8 years as Trump has had his rise. But at the same time, Trump is also bad in all these different ways. And so people who are like, for example, a lot of people move to Texas, move to Mexico, and they're like, oh man, I consider myself an old school liberal or Democrat, but I don't fit in with these crazy people anymore in California and New York. They're just going too far. But at the same time, those people don't necessarily buy into the right-wing nationalism and things that the conservatives support. They end up being what many of us have called politically homeless, right? People who, I'm independent, I'm politically homeless, I don't really know where I fit in. I kind of like these things, but these people are too extreme, but it's kind of extreme on the right over here too. And those people are trying to decide, well, what's right? What's my path? Where do I go? And all of these new media heroes are telling us Trump is the way, Elon Musk is the way. Clearly, being right-wing, being conservative is the true path to freedom. We all see these crazy progressives, and we know that that's not good. So then the answer must be the opposite. And unfortunately, us silly human beings, we're so simple in many ways. We're so brilliant and beautiful too, but we're also so simple in many ways that we can fall for these false dichotomies that tell us it must be this thing or it must be that thing. And, that life isn't always that simple and binary. And I don't think it's also as easy as just saying that Elon Musk and these other people are pure evil. I get that, because some people might say, well, Derrick, you're being black and white with them. What about the good things Elon's done or this and that? Sure. Sure, I'll give you that. You could point at something and say, okay, that's better than worse, and Trump did that, or Musk did that, or Carlson had that great interview, or whatever. But I don't think that means that in the bigger picture they're aligned with us and that we're fighting the same battle. I think these people are also, they represent themselves as something different than they really are. So that is essentially what the Great Inversion is. Let's get into this a little deeper, and I'll actually read you what I wrote. I just wrote this, literally wrote this an hour. I was writing for about an hour and a half before we went live. This is why I was a few minutes late. To understand the insanity of the current and upcoming geopolitical events, you must understand the Great Inversion. Now, I just find it in this way: a false awakening whereby the steadily waking masses of freedom lovers are duped once more into falling for fake heroes and messiahs and stealthily manipulated into supporting their own enslavement. And I kind of already covered this: Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson, and I pointed out why I don't think that he is a friend. You could also talk about Musk. Like, Musk promotes brain trips, transhumanism. He uses his Starlink satellite to support war in Ukraine, and pretty much generally promotes a vision of the future that looks awfully lot like the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab's Fourth Industrial Revolution. He just claims it's for freedom and all these other things. Oh yeah, the Twitter files and it's a free speech platform, free speech, except for Zionism and some of these other topics. Obviously, there's still a lot of people exposing Israel, but there are instances of people being censored still. It hasn't stopped as much as people might like to believe. I believe the bigger picture is that the predator class wants Donald Trump to win the U.S. election to create more false hope and disillusioned Americans, conservatives and libertarians who haven't quite seen what Trump actually represents. From there, we will see the push for more chaos before order is implemented. And I give the example, and I was saying this on social media last week, like, you guys saw Biden's horrible performance at the debate, and you saw the interview that followed, or you probably heard about it. He's not doing good. And now there's like this unprecedented push from like Democratic donors and celebrities, and people are like, Biden, step down, to keep saying, I'm not going anywhere. And the media is just like, oh my God, how could we have not known that Biden is such in bad shape, when all of us out here with eyes and ears have been pointing at and occasionally laughing at the various videos of Biden clearly looking lost. And in fact, I really do think it's a sad case of elder abuse. I think that argument is legit out there. It's not just trolling, that they literally might be abusing this old man for the purpose of maintaining power and trying to maintain the illusion that they're still in control. But why would the DNC and the people who really control them, the donor class behind them and the people behind those donors, why would they all of a sudden just decide, like, everybody got the message as soon as the debate ended, attack Biden, go after him? And I talked about this a couple months ago, that you could see the signs starting to show that they were, it was no longer like, oh, shut up, those are right-wing talking points. All of a sudden it was acceptable to start talking about Biden's age. And these people are just playing this game like, oh my God, who could have imagined this was, going on? And is he going to run? Is he going to step aside? Is it going to be Kamala? Is it going to be Gavin Newsom? And this shit is all designed to keep you paying attention to this season in America, the election drama. It's a freaking script. And the more that they play these kind of games, the easier it is for them to keep you entertained and watching. And the powers that wish they were, if Trump wins, which appears very likely, they're going to be able to pacify, once again, many freedom lovers who have fallen for the Trump deception. And they will also at the same time trigger the heck out of the leftists, so that we can expect more riots, more fighting in the street, and more authoritarianism from Trump's administration, especially post-assassination, whereas we were just talking about a couple of moments ago that many people have now deified him and essentially see him as touched by the hand of God. So they're going to make all kinds of excuses for him if they weren't already. Now, let's get a little deeper into the Great Inversion. As I mentioned, I first heard this term from probably Alexandra. You can find her all over the place, probablyalexandra.com. I linked to her in this article. She is a Christian content creator. I'm not a Christian. I don't have anything against Christians per se. I come from a Christian family, but my analysis is not coming from a Christian background. Hers is. Either way, I think she's very spot on in her analysis. And in fact, just yesterday, right after the Trump assassination attempt, she put out a new blog on Substack and her website talking about the Great Inversion. And she says, quote, "The concept of the Great Inversion suggests that major societal events are manipulated or staged to create a specific narrative or achieve certain objectives. Incidents of violence, especially involving prominent figures, instill fear and uncertainty among the population. This fear can be leveraged to introduce new policies, increase surveillance, or justify authoritarian measures. In this case, it will likely further the light side of the agenda of gaining control over current institutions and bringing about change. They want to shift the narrative and continue the further inversion." And in an older blog, she says this: the inversion represents the shift from the current world order to a newer world order, but not in the way most are conditioned to expect. It's the inversion from dark to light. But again, this is the false light. So she says here, the Great Reset, dark; the Great Awakening, light. Globalists make up what most falls into the dark side. They are identified by their beliefs. For the sake of this article, anyone in the public eye who is against globalist ideas would be considered to be the light side of the agenda and all it entails. The opposite. At the moment, we're being told it's globalism, centralization, mass censorship, the Great Reset, etc., versus nationalism, alleged decentralization, free-ish speech, the Great Awakening, sovereignty, etc. And then she looks at the word inversion. The word inversion means the action of inverting something or the state of being inverted, a reversal. In some cases, inversion is the opposite: dark and light, hot and cold, etc. These opposites are poles of one another. So again, this poles, this idea of being on the same plane but polar opposites. Poles consisting of two opposing ideas, varying only in degree, united by the axis. This discussion of poles and the ideas which appear opposed yet actually aligned in one capacity is another vital part to our conversation. Just like the Republican Democratic parties, again, I said this a couple moments ago, this is how most of us understand this concept, that it seems like they're diametrically opposed, and on some issues they are, but when it comes to war, surveillance, Zionism, and taking away the rights of the people, we can count on both parties to come together in a bipartisan effort and rob the people economically and all those fun things. At the end of the day, they serve the same masters. And Alexandra believes that there have been inversions throughout history, but the current one we're dealing with is a worldwide shift, and I agree with that as well. And here again, she talks about the poles. She says, quote, the Great Inversion consists of two poles, dark and light. You can also think of the poles as the right or left hand joined by the body. They are not independent of each other, nor are they enemies. They work in a symbiotic relationship to accomplish a shared goal, no matter how messy that appears to be. The poles are joined by an axis, thus the two can never be separated. They can only vary in degree. They divide in order to conquer. And that is essentially what I think the Great Inversion is. So that's giving credit where credit's due. I did not make up the term the Great Inversion, although you're going to continue to hear me use it. And maybe some of you guys are resonating with that. Thanks to everybody who's listening right now. We got a good amount of viewers across YouTube, 2 YouTube channels, Twitter, Facebook, 2 Facebook pages, Odyssey, Rockfin. This will be posted later on BitChute, on Substack, on Spotify, etc. Thank you guys all for supporting me. Let's continue. We got one more section. Right now we are discussing the Great Inversion and the false awakening and how I believe this is what we are dealing with. Now, we're going to take it back 100 years ago to 1919 to the philosopher, the anthroposophical philosopher and founder, Rudolf Steiner. I've done a video or 2 about Rudolf Steiner in the past, and I've been wanting to do something about this whole thing, and there will be more deep dives coming up. And I think many of you Christians as well, maybe not mainstream Christians, but esoteric Christians or just open-minded Christians might be interested in Rudolf Steiner's talks on Christianity. In fact, I have this one. This is called, this is a different one. This is called An Outline of Occult Science. This one right here, Christianity as a Mystical Fact. This is by Rudolf Steiner. It's a collection of one of his, or a couple of his lectures. So in 1919, he gave a talk called Lucifer and Ahriman, where he outlined a very similar concept to what we're talking about of the Great Inversion, but he talked about Christ, Lucifer, and what he calls Ahriman. So again, even though I'm not a Christian, I do think that the way Steiner uses this analysis can be applied to our circumstances, whether you're religious or not. And he didn't even mean it in this specific way necessarily about the way maybe Christians imagine, with like a horned guy with devil horns and all this kind of stuff. But regardless, these forces represent, whether or not they represent literal physical beings or not, I believe this is a topic that we cannot ignore. So Steiner believed that there exist 2 forces of evil. One of them came in the form of Lucifer, and the other one came in the form of Ahriman. And although these 2 forces appear to be totally different, and they incarnate differently, because he said, there is an incarnation of Lucifer that happened in the past, and that we're witnessing, or it may already have happened, the incarnation of Ahriman. And again, he said that they're actually on the same plane of existence. And in his sort of diagram or his model, you got Lucifer and Ahriman on one side and Ahriman on the other. And then above that, you have this Christ consciousness, this Christ energy above and beyond both those forces. The Steiner online library says that, quote, that Steiner warned that, quote, humanity must walk a conscious middle path between the two tempting powers of Lucifer and Ahriman, where Lucifer could be said to represent a false light with a focus on spiritual practices which take people away from the Christ energy. Ahriman represents materialism and a more mechanical and static energy. And while the two forces appear to work against each other, they are actually working more and more together as time passes. And Steiner said in his lecture, quote, just as there was the incarnation which culminated in Golgotha, the incarnation of Christ and the man Jesus of Nazareth, there was an actual incarnation of Lucifer in far-off Asia in the 3rd millennium BC. And the source of inspiration for much ancient culture was what can only be described as an earthly incarnation of Lucifer in a man of flesh and blood. So he basically says that that Luciferian energy came into human being at some point, kind of like the Christ allegedly did, and that is responsible for a lot of the problems we've seen over the generations. But he says that these aren't the only incarnations. He said, quote, before only a part of the 3rd millennium of the post-Christian era has elapsed, which is about now, I believe, right? 1,000, 2,000, now we're only, I guess this is the beginning of the 3rd millennium, you could claim. Maybe not, but we'll continue. Before only a part of the 3rd millennium, the post-Christian era has elapsed, there will be in the West an actual incarnation of Ahriman in the flesh. And while Steiner says that the forces of Lucifer and Christ are more familiar to humanity, he warns that humanity is completely uninformed and ill-prepared for the Ahrimanic energy to arrive here. He says, quote, if Ahriman were able to slink into a humanity unaware of his coming, that would gladden him most of all. And it is for this reason that the occurrences and trends in which Ahriman is working for this future incarnation must be brought to light. And the time has now come for individual men to know which tendencies and events around them are machinations of Ahriman, helping him to prepare for his approaching incarnation. Steiner also warned that in his own day that people, quote, no longer value the spirit for the sake of the spirit or the soul for the sake of the soul, and are only entranced by what is regarded as useful. And he claimed that nationalism was actually a benefit to Ahriman and that it represented an opportunity for him or it to take hold of humanity. He said, quote, whatever can separate men into groups, whatever can alienate them from mutual understanding of the whole world over and drive wedges between them, strengthens Ahriman's impulse. He says that, quote, blood relationships have ceased to be the decisive factor in human relationships, but if nationalism persisted, it would, quote, be playing straight into the hands of Ahriman. He also warned that Ahriman's interests are promoted by humanity being captured by political parties. So he believed that nationalism, political parties, and anything that separates us from spirit and from the soul and from each other is this Ahrimanic energy. And I think that's what we're seeing. He said, as with Alexander's discussion on the poles, Steiner sees these two forces as representing opposite poles with similar objectives and outcomes. He says, quote, Ahriman and Lucifer always work hand in hand. The only question is which of the two predominates in man's consciousness at a particular epoch of time. And he warned that Ahriman's activities were coming into prominence. And he said this in 1919, about 100 years ago. And so that brings me towards the end of what I've already outlined and shared with you guys. Like, you guys kind of already get my thoughts and opinions on Trump and Elon. I shared a little bit Tucker Carlson. I believe that they represent this false light that we are seeing. We can see the darkness, but now we're going to see this flip. Everybody's going to think there's been a real awakening and that it was caused by Trump and Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson. And then when they start to show their true colors and they do bring on the authoritarianism and the technocratic state that we know, the Great Reset that they claim to be opposed to, when they help it come about in one way or the other, so many people are going to make excuses for it because they've fallen for this spell for these men and women in some cases. That is what Ahriman is all about. That is what this Luciferian and Ahriman kind of balance is about, or call it the Great Inversion, left, right, false light. That's when I say the Great Inversion, when I talk about false awakening, that is what I'm talking about, guys. And that article is at theconsciousresistance.com. I noticed a couple of typos, so give me 30 minutes to go fix those after this. But please share it. Please share both of the articles I showed you today. I wrote these. I stayed up till 2 a.m. last night researching and writing the Trump one. We got it published at thelastamericanvagabond.com. I got that out today, and then I got this one out and ready for the show. These are two important articles that I think explain what's going on right now. People need to be asking questions about the Trump assassination, of course, and see what Trump assassination attempt, and see what we find out next. But also, I think that this Great Inversion conversation, helping people understand what's really at play here is another big piece of the puzzle. Like, I don't think we are genuinely witnessing. It's not to say that there's no awakening happening. Like, I do think there's awakening. I mean, I think a lot of the things I'm involved with are part of the awakening, not just us, but there's a lot of other people. But it's not going to come in politics. Go to the greaterreset.org and see what we're doing with the People's Reset. We're holding events in North America, now in the UK. We're countering the World Economic Forum, not just by talking about it or just holding signs and chanting, which has its place, but actually saying, you know what, if they're going to work night and day on their idea and their vision of the future, why don't we do the same thing? They're planning a great inversion. They're trying to fool people into this false awakening. Well, you know what? We're going to be so focused on how our 2030 is going to look and beyond. And my 2030, guys, it's going to be living on land with clean water, good food. I've already got the land. I've already got community we're building. We're going to be growing soon. We've got fruit trees, and helping other people gain the skills, how to take care of themselves through self-defense, how to get off big tech, how to heal your mind, body, and spirit, because you got to exit and build from slavery systems, and some of the biggest slavery systems are doubts, fears, insecurities, and limiting beliefs that hold us back. That is what Ahriman and Lucifer and these fake wannabe saviors prey upon. They prey upon our own insecurities and our doubts and our traumas, which make so many of our brothers and sisters fall into this trap of thinking that they need a hero, that they need to be saved by somebody. Look, and putting religion aside, you don't need to be saved by anybody. You definitely don't need to be saved by some political hack who doesn't really care about you. And when I talk about this, people say, well, what are you going to do then, Derrick? You're going to vote for Biden? Oh, that's like the most low level thinking. Yes, if I don't like one guy, I must like the other guy. No, I'm not voting for Biden. No, I'm not voting for RFK Jr. They're all Zionists. I'm not voting for any of those people, and I don't play political games like that. But that doesn't mean I'm apathetic. Somebody told me earlier, oh, you're an accelerationist. You just want everything to collapse and crash. No, I don't. In fact, I don't. I'm horrified that will happen, because there's so many people who are still dependent on government systems around the world that we will see a lot of death, and it will be chaotic. But I wish, and I pray, and I work towards a time where we can get away from being dependent on governments and empowering people to see that we don't need them, that we don't need Elon Musk's in the billionaire class, and we don't need Donald Trump, and we don't need Joe Biden or any of these people, Obama, to lead us. We have the power within our own hearts and minds, because the Creator did bring us here. The Creator breathed life into us to exist on the planet at this moment in time, to be connecting with each other across digital platforms for the purpose of trying to transmute this chaos into something better. That's exactly what we need to do. They've got their dark light, their dark and their false light. They've got their Agenda 2030 and their Great Reset and their Fourth Industrial Revolution. We need the People's Reset. We need our own vision of 2030 and beyond. Agora 2030, Liberty 2030. This is what I put my energy into. I'm not an accelerationist. I'm not apathetic. I'm not giving up. I just know that we can't expect a system that is literally run by pedophiles and co-opted by intelligence networks, which have no problem assassinating people, killing people, murdering them, murdering children, and thinking that voting is going to fix it, especially when every single person who's running, people out there make excuses for Trump. Trump just picked this J.D. Vance guy who only became, into politics because of Peter Thiel gave him $15 million. Who's Peter Thiel? Founder of PayPal, big part of Palantir, investing in Palantir, which is the surveillance tech company you need to know about if you don't know about. Also, Peter Thiel's a steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group. I'm sure that's going to be great. But no, people make excuses. Well, because he's got to do what he's got to do to get into politics and blah, blah. They're making you participate in evil. You are participating in that great inversion, that Luciferian Ahrimanic energy, one side or the other. You're still playing the game, my friends. The true answer, the one way they don't know how to deal with us, because guess what? They know how to deal with assassinations, with violence. They fucking kill you. They throw you in prison. And violence shouldn't be encouraged. It's not going to help anybody. They know how to deal with you if you vote. And if you try to have some insurgent candidacy, like say a Ron Paul or somebody else, and even Robert F. Kennedy Jr., even though he's a Zionist, they're clearly blocking him out of the game. Although I think there's a script being played out still. He might have a come behind victory. I'm calling it. Maybe we'll see. If you have an insurgent candidacy, they're not going to let you in. They're going to change the game, screw you over. They control all the levers, my friends. And that's not a defeatist position. It is a realistic, accepting fucking reality of how much control they do have. That doesn't mean we have no control, but you outsource your power. You give away your power when you choose to go press that button in the ballot box and put your little sticker on because you voted every 2 years and 4 years. You're giving away your power and saying, please, Donald Trump, please, Joe Biden, please, anybody, fix the world for me, do something for me, because I'm just too busy working in a freaking rat race and tired and exhausted and trying to just live my life and raise my kids and have a good time that I don't have time to do anything for my own self and my own community. And that is by design. I'm not blaming you. This is not victim blaming. They created this entire system so you could constantly be in that rat race and not have time to educate yourself, to empower yourself, to become an entrepreneur, to become free from their systems. It is by design. But if you make the time, my friends, if you take a little bit of energy, if you download my book for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to, or purchase it in Spanish, English, German, or French, or listen to the audiobook for free, then you can get some ideas, and maybe you start putting in a couple of hours extra a week to saving up some money to buy some land, or to pool some land with some freedom members in your community, to learning new skills, to learning about permaculture, to learning about the above phone, getting off big tech. There are so many solutions. There are so many ways you can vote with your actions on the daily basis that do not involve participating in a rigged, evil, corrupted system. Stop playing the game. That's the answer. That's the answer. That's the fucking answer. I know some of you guys don't want to hear that because it just seems so like that seems like, but what am I doing, Derrick? What you're saying sounds hard. It sounds like I have to change my lifestyle. I might have to change my habits. I might have to change who I am. I might have to rethink how I live and who I work with. And it sounds like a lot of work. It's just so much easier for me to trust that Trump is going to fix things, or that Elon's going to fix everything. I just want to press the button, Derrick. Please don't make me work. Please don't actually make me responsible for my own actions and my own choices and my own behavior. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I have to be the annoying guy talking in your ear saying, please, my friends, can we try to live in line with our values and principles? Because we have young ones depending on us. We have those who are not born yet coming into this world they're just depending on us. They have no say in what happens right now, but you do, I do. We're awake, right? We're aware. We know what's going on, but what the fuck are you doing about it? It's not enough to be awake. You must be activated. You must be action oriented, because you can be awake and you can get marched all the way into the FEMA camp or into the COVID concentration camp or whatever. If you don't act, if you don't do anything, if we see what's coming, if we're the enlightened one, the forward-thinking people, and we can see the train wreck on the horizon, but we choose not to act, we are only selling out ourselves. We're selling out our ancestors, and everybody, no matter what part of the planet you come from, every single one of our ancestors had to go through blood, sweat, and tears to get us here, right now, existing. And if you choose to not act, you're selling them out and everything they did to get you here. But not only that, you're selling those coming 7 generations and beyond that you will never meet, your kids, grandchildren, etc., that are depending on you. Wake up, stop playing slave games, and realize that the only answer is going to come from us, in our own hearts, in our own communities, coming together, organizing, and building the better world that we know is possible, my friends. That's what it's about.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.